Good to have you with us on a Monday. I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is off. We begin this morning with widespread panic gripping southern Gaza. Israel continues to prepare for its controversial ground offensive in the southern city of Rafah, with troops ordering more evacuations there. The United Nations estimates about 300,000 people have already fled that city, a place that has become a refuge for so many displaced civilians. The fighting in Rafah is intensifying despite several countries, including the U.S., calling on Prime Minister Netanyahu to stop the operation. Some in Israel are also growing frustrated with the ongoing war. Thousands took to the streets Sunday night. Protesters called for an immediate return of the hostages being held by Hamas and for Netanyahu's resignation. The toll on Gaza is mounting. United Nations agencies in southern Gaza predict they will run out of food today. And the health ministry there says the death toll inside the enclave since the start of the war has now topped 35,000. Many of those killed are women and children. NBC News correspondent Hala Garani joins us now from Cairo, Egypt, with the latest on the war. Hala, good morning. So Israeli defense troops began ordering more evacuations from Rafah over the weekend to prepare for that ground offensive. At this point, are there any safe zones for Gazans to flee to? And how intense is the fighting on the ground right now?
It's difficult to overstate just how catastrophic the humanitarian situation is right now in southern Gaza. Almost 400,000 people, we understand, have fled parts of southern Gaza that the IDF told them to evacuate in anticipation of that long-promised offensive on Rafah that, as you mentioned in the introduction, the U.S. has publicly opposed for months now. And this is happening while this humanitarian situation has reached worst-case scenarios in many parts of the south, where so many people have sought shelter. My colleague Ayman Mahieldin spoke to an American trauma surgeon currently working in Gaza. Listen.
I've seen combat and war wounds and have done surgery with humanitarian and disaster relief now for almost 20 years. And this is nothing like this. You know, the injuries, the amount of children that I've seen is just, unprecedented. I take care of more, people under the age of 13 than I've ever taken care of before. I've done more amputations and seen more traumatic amputations of children than I've seen during my entire career in the last 2 weeks.
And this highlights the fact that about 2/3 of the population of Gaza consists of women and children. Back to you.
Hala, we've talked so much about what's happening in southern Gaza, but northern Gaza remains mostly isolated because of the heavy bombing we saw at the beginning of this war. I know we're learning new information about new fighting, though, near Gaza City. What more do we know about that? Has Hamas regrouped in the north?
Yeah, that's a great question, because this is a phenomenon that we've observed now for the last few days. The Israeli military is battling Hamas fighters in areas of northern Gaza that it had previously cleared, and where there is near total destruction of residential life and infrastructure. In other words, this has become a full-on battleground. And there are concerns, therefore, that the IDF doesn't have a strategy for the areas that it has attacked in the first months of the war. In fact, yesterday, Antony Blinken was speaking on NBC on Meet the Press, and he said that even if the IDF goes in to Rafah, there will still be thousands of armed Hamas left. That's something that he said, that others have warned against for months now, that when you have an insurgent force battling a regular army in the way that this conflict has developed over the last more than half year now, that it is extremely difficult to neutralize or to decapitate, as the Israeli leadership has said they intend to do with this particular force. And this is all happening as civilians are suffering immensely.
All right, Hala Garani in Cairo. Hala, thank you so much. As she just mentioned, Secretary of State Antony Blinken made an appearance this weekend on Meet the Press. Speaking with moderator Kristen Welker, he addressed U.S. concerns over Israel's efforts to try and limit civilian casualties during a military operation in Rafah. Here's part of that conversation.
I hear you saying you haven't seen a credible plan yet for how Israel would go into Rafah and mitigate civilian casualties. Is it fair to say that President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu are not seeing eye to eye right now?
There are two things. One is that, as the president said, and as we said in many conversations over the last couple of months, there has to be a credible plan for the civilians.
Have you seen a credible plan?
We have to make sure. We have not. Second, there's something else that's important. We also haven't seen a plan for what happens the day after this war in Gaza ends. Because right now, the trajectory that Israel is on is, even if it goes in and takes heavy action in Rafah, there will still be thousands of armed Hamas left. We've seen in areas that Israel has cleared, in the north, even in Khan Yunis, Hamas coming back. So the trajectory right now is that going into to Rafah, even to deal with these remaining battalions, especially in the absence of a plan for civilians, risks doing terrible harm to civilians and not solving the problem, a problem that both of us want to solve, which is making sure Hamas cannot again govern Gaza. Israel's on the trajectory potentially to inherit an insurgency with many armed Hamas left, or if it leaves, a vacuum filled by chaos, filled by anarchy, and probably refilled by Hamas. We've been talking to them about a much better way of getting an enduring result, enduring security, both in Gaza itself and much more broadly in the region. Those conversations continue, and that's what partners, that's what allies do. We are clear-eyed, and we speak the truth to each other as we see it. We have American interests first and foremost in mind. We also have Israel's interests in mind. And there may be a difference in view in the best way to achieve them, but that's also the nature of the relationship.
You can see my full interviews and a lot more at meetthepress.com. You can also get more Meet the Press here on NBC News Now every weekday at 4 p.m.
All right, Kristen, thank you. Let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Aaron Gilchrist for more on how the Biden administration is responding to the latest in Gaza. Aaron, good morning. So we just saw it right there. The Biden administration remains critical of Prime Minister Netanyahu. How is Netanyahu responding, and how much is this straining the relationship between these two leaders?
Yeah, I think you heard Secretary Blinken there really characterize the complexity of the relationship between the two leaders, particularly in the last several months as this conflict in Gaza has continued. And so what we've heard in the past from the two leaders is that they have known each other for decades, obviously, but that their relationship has had moments of disagreement. And that really is as far as the two are going publicly. But we do know that there is some frustration on the part of the Biden administration and President Biden, even with the way Israel's been handling this war in Gaza, the way the prime minister in particular has been handling this war in Gaza. Some frustration that some of the advice, some of the military tactics that the U.S. has suggested to the Israelis, it's been heard, but it hasn't been activated in the way that the administration would like to see. And so there's this concern about whether and how the Israelis will go into Rafah, into the southern part of Gaza at this point. And that's, I think, I think a lot of what we're hearing in terms of resistance from the administration, a cautious tone from President Biden is a result of concern about the 1 million people who are now holed up in that part of Gaza. Joe?
Just last week, Aaron, the Biden administration announced it'd be halting the shipment of certain weapons to Israel. Since then, the president has received vocal pushback from Congress. How is the Biden administration responding to that pushback? Is he still standing behind his decision?
He is still standing behind his decision, and really there's two parts to the decision that the president has made. Obviously, this word that came last week about the Biden administration withholding about 3,500 large bombs. We're talking about those 2,000-pound bombs. There's been a pause placed on that shipment of new materials. At the same time, we know the administration has sent over defensive weapons, small arms, for example, to the Israelis. And so it really speaks to, I think, Joe, the concern about the Israelis going into Rafah with a major, massive, large-scale military operation, and what Secretary Blinken addressed there, the reality around the fact that in northern Gaza, it seems as though Hamas is growing again, is coming back into some level of power. And so they want the Israelis to have defensive weapons in particular so that they can continue to fight Hamas, particularly in the areas where it seems as though that organization is coming back, Joe.
We can't forget about the hostage situation. The families of 5 Americans who it's believed are still being held by Hamas met with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, also Middle East Coordinator Brett McGurk. What are we hearing from those families?
Yeah, Joe, this was the eighth time that these families have met with the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. That meeting happened on Friday. It's something that's been a regular thing for Jake Sullivan, who obviously has been deeply involved in so much of what's been going on from the U.S. perspective, the negotiations that have been happening, decision-making around military activity. But it's been important for him, we understand, to meet with these families as well, to try to reassure them that the administration is continuing to make efforts to bring forth a ceasefire and to get these hostages released. We know from the families that they expressed some frustration that there seemed to be progress being made on a ceasefire deal and a hostage release, and then that fell apart last week. But the families remain hopeful, and they will continue to have these conversations with the administration. Joe?
All right, Aaron Gilchrist. Aaron, thank you so much. Here in New York, the criminal hush money trial of former President Donald Trump is entering a pivotal week. What unfolds in that courtroom could dramatically shape the outcome of one of the most closely watched cases in American history. The prosecution is set to call its star witness to the stand later this morning, Mr. Trump's former fixer and lawyer, Michael Cohen. He's expected to testify about his role in facilitating the alleged hush money payment made to Stormy Daniels. It's an allegation the former president denies. NBC News correspondent Von Hilliard's outside the courthouse for us in New York. We're also joined by our legal analyst, Angela Senadella. Von, let's start with you. So remind us why Michael Cohen is such an important witness for the prosecution. A reminder, he has served prison time for crimes related to all this, for lying and for campaign finance violations. So what is he expected to say on the stand over the next few days?
Right, Joe. The rest of the witnesses built the story for Michael Cohen to fill in the gaps on here. Michael Cohen is that crucial witness that the prosecution has been waiting to call. And you asked, what is he going to share with this jury that the district attorney's office believes will lead to a guilty charge for Donald Trump? And it has everything to do with the fact that he was involved from start to finish. Not only that August of 2015 meeting at Trump Tower between David Pecker, the National Enquirer publisher, and Donald Trump over the allegation that is where the three of them concocted the catch and kill scheme to go purchase salacious stories, allegations that could be potentially politically damaging to Donald Trump before the 2016 election, and ensure that those individuals were paid off and off the market. But then also the actual reimbursement checks. In 2017, Donald Trump in the White House, you'll recall Michael Cohen paying Stormy Daniels in October of 2016 that initial $130,000. But then the witnesses, or I should say the prosecution, expects for Michael Cohen to testify that in 2017, he sought those reimbursement checks from Donald Trump while Donald Trump was in the White House. And that is where part of the alleged crime of the falsification of the business records comes into such crucial play here.
Angela, Michael Cohen is not the perfect witness. As I mentioned, he comes with his own baggage. So what does the prosecution need to do to get the best out of his testimony?
Well, I think they've done quite a bit. As Vaughn mentioned, there was already a lot of corroboration, so many witnesses who really laid the context and the groundwork. They've also, though, in many ways, had these witnesses already discuss how potentially problematic his testimony could be, how he wasn't always the most trustworthy guy, because that's going to be the biggest issue on the stand. The fact that he has committed perjury before, he doesn't necessarily have a track record of saying things honestly on the stand. And he's also written multiple books and done so many media appearances with names, for example, like Revenge, which could potentially point to so much outside bias. So in the prosecution, not only are we going to see so many questions about whether or not Cohen was just the underling or whether or not he was really the fall guy for Donald J. Trump, but we will also see a lot of questions about when his credibility in the past was questioned. What was the reason for that? And why this time is he telling the truth on the stand? They're going to lay that prior to the cross, because at that point, we know the defense is going to go so hard on that and just attack every time he's had any inconsistency.
Angela, last week ahead of Cohen's testimony, the judge asked the prosecution to rein in Cohen over public comments he's making about Mr. Trump and the case, especially on TikTok. The defense is pointing at what they perceive as a double standard, with Mr. Trump being under the strict gag order, while Cohen has been speaking out. Do you think the defense has the right to feel aggrieved here? And could Cohen's outbursts hurt the prosecution in any way?
Well, I also want to note that one of the violations, the alleged violations from the prosecution that the judge did not find of this gag order was when Trump was seemingly responding to Cohen. So it seems here the judge is aware of the defendant's right to respond. But we know there's a huge difference between witnesses and what they're allowed to do, and also defendants. The defendant right now is the one on trial. Obviously, it's not Cohen. He's already served his time. So I think that we're going to see, a lot of questions about these TikToks, about this, likely on cross, not necessarily to begin with, but we are going to see whether or not when he said these things, they represent outside bias, because that's what we saw so much with Stormy Daniels also on the stand. When she has these other posts, do they reflect an outside motivation that's not honesty, Joe?
Vaughn, the prosecution is signaling it could rest its case this week, saying they had 2 witnesses remaining. So real quick, what's next?
Right, Joe, we don't know who that other witness is. So we've got Michael Cohen, another potential witness. The prosecution could rest its case by the end of this week. The defense will then have the opportunity to bring forward their own witnesses. There may be only 1 or 2 individuals. Of course, the outstanding variable is whether Donald Trump will testify himself. If he were to, that would take several days here. But we could very well, by the end of next week, if Donald Trump doesn't testify, we could potentially have this sent to the jury to determine the outcome of this trial.
All right, Vaughn and Angela, thank you both. Just a few short blocks away from the Trump trial, another political figure faces a trial that begins today. This one includes bribery allegations involving gold bars, a brand new Mercedes, and a halal meat monopoly. This morning, jury selection begins in the federal corruption trial of Senator Bob Menendez. Now, he and his wife Nadine are accused of accepting bribes from 3 New Jersey businessmen in return for favors, including alleged meddling in criminal investigations and granting favors to the governments of Egypt and Qatar. FBI agents say they found stashes of gold bars in his home and nearly $500,000 stuffed into envelopes and hidden in clothes in his closet. Menendez and his wife Nadine deny any wrongdoing. They've both pleaded not guilty to the charges. This is Menendez's second corruption trial. A previous bribery trial in 2017 ended in a hung jury. NBC News Justice and Intelligence Correspondent Kendelanian joins us now with a preview. Ken, good morning. So, this trial, you could say it has it all: bribery, intrigue, halal food. Bring us up to speed on how we got here and what we can expect when court does get underway today.
Hey, good morning, Joe. That's right. This is one of the most egregious set of corruption allegations against a public official in modern history, really. Senator Menendez is charged with conspiracy to commit bribery, fraud, extortion, obstruction of justice. And if that's not bad enough, he's charged with acting as an agent of a foreign government, of Egypt and of Qatar, of taking bribes, essentially selling his office to help not just his businessmen friends, but foreign governments. And that is really dramatic. And altogether, he's facing a maximum of more than 50 years in prison, although that's not likely the sentence here. He has, of course, pleaded not guilty. He's going to go on trial alongside 2 businessmen who are accused of paying him bribes. A third businessman charged in the case has pleaded guilty and has agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. His wife, who is also charged, is not standing trial today. So today, jury selection begins, and testimony, we believe, will unfold this week, and it's going to be fascinating, Joe.
And have we been given any preview of his defense? The gold bars, for example, have raised so many eyebrows. Any explanations for that?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, and it's really interesting, his defense team wants to call a psychiatrist who will testify about the reasons they say that he was hoarding cash and gold bars, having to do with his family's tragic circumstances in Cuba, where their wealth was confiscated, and some unfortunate things that happened with his father. Essentially, they want to argue that he had a propensity to keep cash at home. Prosecutors obviously not only disagree with that, they want to keep that testimony out altogether. And there's also some signs, Joe, interestingly, that he may try to blame his wife, who was, according to this indictment, deeply involved in this corruption scheme. And he may try to say that it was really more her soliciting some of these bribes and arranging for the official actions, and that he was ignorant of what was going on.
Let's talk more about this, because this was originally supposed to be a joint trial. Then last month, a judge ordered separate trials for Menendez and his wife. This was after her attorneys requested a 2-month delay to deal with medical issues. So why are we seeing 2 trials here?
Yeah, that's right, Joe. So according to the court, Nadine Menendez had surgery for an unspecified medical condition and is not fit to stand trial. So there will be a separate trial. She also had an issue where her lawyers had to leave the case because they've now become witnesses because they misrepresented certain facts as part of an alleged obstruction of justice scheme to prosecutors. So this is not an ideal situation for prosecutors. They don't want to try this case twice. They don't want Nadine Menendez to have a look at all the evidence, but this is where circumstances led them, and this is how it's going to go.
All right. Kendelanian Ken, thank you so much. Later today in Baltimore, demolition crews will use explosives to clear a section of the collapsed Francis Scott Key Bridge that's lying atop the crashed container ship. This comes after weeks of preparations. It's going to be the biggest step in the cleanup process since the bridge collapsed nearly 7 weeks ago. The controlled demolition, now set for tonight, was put on hold yesterday because of lightning and rising tides. Officials say it's going to sound like fireworks, and they expect we're going to see multiple puffs of smoke. This process is important. It's going to allow the cargo ship Dolly to find its way to the port of Baltimore. It'll also open up maritime traffic through that area once again. It's soggy in the south to start your week with flooding concerns stretching from Texas all the way to Florida. So for more, let's get a look at your morning news now forecast with Michelle Grossman. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hey there, Joe. So good to see you. And yeah, surprise, surprise, soggy in the south. We're looking at flooding rains as we go throughout this Monday and really the next couple of days. We're also looking at the threat for severe weather. And it's not just in the south. We have wet weather all the way to the Great Lakes as well. But this is the south right now. Looking at radar, you can see heavy rain falling. That's where we're seeing those darker colors, those reds, those oranges, the yellows, even seeing a little purple popping in here. That could be some hail because we're seeing some lightning, hearing that thunder as well. We have 11 million under flood watches from eastern Texas all the way along the Gulf Coast. And this will be the case as we go throughout today and then a little bit into tomorrow. That's going to shift a little bit further to the east. Now, on top of that, we're looking at the chance for some severe storms. So we do have an enhanced risk. That's 3 out of 5 on the scale. Also a slight risk. So we're looking anywhere from Austin, Houston, Shreveport, Alexandria, all the way over to Mobile, Panama City. Could see some strong storms today. What does that mean? Well, we're looking at 23 million people impacted by the risk of severe storms. Could see very large hail once again, like we've seen with so many of these storms this season. Winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. That could bring down some trees, some power lines. The ground's going to be very, very wet and soggy. So we could see some power outages. A few tornadoes are possible as well, especially in eastern Texas along the Gulf Coast with this orange shading. And we could see that large hail, as I mentioned. The likeliest chance for that would be in this hatched area, the blue hatched area, where we could see 2 inches in diameter or even bigger than that. So Austin, Houston, places like that. Then we're going to get rounds and rounds of rain. We could see 2 to 3 inches per hour. We could see up to 8 inches in some spots. So we do have the risk for flooding. We have the risk for flash flooding as well, especially where you see this pink here. That's your moderate risk. So New Orleans, Panama City could see some flooding conditions. Rainfall forecast, it's a lot. We're looking at those dark colors here, reds, oranges, yellows. Again, locally up to 5 inches, but certainly could see up 6, 7, even 8 inches in some spots. This is why it's a big storm system that's moving off to the east. You can see the rain not only in the south, but spreading up to the Great Lakes as well. That severe risk from Texas to Mississippi. This moves off to the east tomorrow. We're looking at that system slowly drifting to the east. The strongest storms target the southeast. So now we're talking about portions of the Carolinas into Florida once again. But we could see some rain moving into the mid-Atlantic, the northeast as well. And that's going to stay in place on Wednesday. As far as the severe threat goes on Tuesday, winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. Damaging hail, not quite as big as today, but still an inch or larger. A brief tornado is possible, and that's mainly in the southeast into the Tennessee Valley, Birmingham, Atlanta, Vidalia, Albany, and Jacksonville. Again, we do have a flash flooding risk tomorrow because these storms have a lot of moisture to them. It's pulling the moisture off the Gulf, so we're going to see rounds of heavy rain from portions of the Ohio Valley into the Carolinas and also the southeast. So once again, soggy, and we are looking at the chance for some storms in the south.
All right, we know you'll keep an eye on it. Michelle, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.